qualities being and plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Viva Bojack, 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 Viva Bojack. That's what I'm talking about. First time singing the songs from Viva Bojack. Shout out. I don't know what I'm doing really, but I got passion. That's what it's about. It's all about passion.
Fucking pronouns! Fucking pronouns!
Whoopsie.
Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams.
Howdy, folks. Hello. Paladin, yes, cargo vroom. It goes vroom so smooth, it's crazy. Showed up to dancing? You did. Stream just started, Tipster. How you doing? Also, how you doing, Paladin? Hello, OS Crane. Hello, Solomon Moose. Hello, Mr. Miyagi. Hello, Snuggle Kitten. Thank you for getting a sub, by the way. Hello, one and all. Hello, Berserk Jazerk. Hello, German Cow JJ. Hello. How am I? I am good. Today's been a really long day, but I'm doing good. To celebrate Pride Month, I had a lot of extraordinarily gay sex, and also I got my car fixed, which was really nice. And I want to play more Elden Ring, so we're doing a part 2. And I tried to stream like 10 minutes ago, and my streaming software like froze up, and I had to restart my computer, and there was a Windows update, so it just took several minutes. You get any sleep at all? No, I had meetings. All day, and then I streamed, and meetings, stream, meetings, car stuff, meetings. But we got another content creator to come out to the New York Progressive Victory Bowman stuff event, so that's amazing. And we're still getting people confirmed like a week out. Yeah, OS Crane, I have no idea what was even in that update. Thank you, Lady Domina. One day we will have cities where every part of the city can be accessed without the need of a car. Oh god, if only. I don't know if we'll see that in the Midwest, as soon as the coasts, but I can hope. There's like a light rail station that's been under construction for like years, like somewhat near my place, and I'm just like, ugh, I want it to be done. It'd be so cool to just be able to take light rail everywhere. Various body parts touching each other equals meetings. I mean, if we include those meetings, there were so many meetings today. Well, the nice thing about like being in a place like New York is that literally driving anywhere is a hell inconceivable by man. So like in comparison, taking the train or the bus is like a godsend. Is the rail lightweight or just well lit? I think it's just lightweight. Hey, Pensive Scarlet. Hello, Eddie Spencer. Yes, we are on late. the gay sex took some time. Then I made dinner, and then we watched a couple episodes of old timey Star Trek, and it's been really fun. We got to the episode with the Horta, and it's one of my favorites. It's such a great episode of Star Trek. Also, we made it to the first episode with the Klingons, and oh boy, that has not aged well. That has not aged well at all. Oh god. Oh god. What happened there? All right. Let's watch some Elden Ring, huh? Now my question is, do you guys want to do Elden Ring by itself and me just like chat with you guys? Or do you want to do Elden Ring and politics? Because I can do both. Those are both options. I just want to know kind of where you guys are at tonight. In St. Louis, we have a light rail, but people would rather have their nails pulled out with a Leatherman than do socialist public transit, even though parking downtown is a disaster. God, like, I don't get it, man. Like, being in a car is not great if you're spending like 50 minutes stuck in like congestion. It's not great. I need the brain rot. I mean, fuck. If you guys want the brain rot, I got plenty of it. Okay, we've been slow on the brain rot lately. Got your pup hood and your snacks. Let's go. Hell yeah. We have pride emotes. We do. Elden Ring and politics sounds chill. Brain Chernobyl. Oh my god, guys. Why? You guys tell me this, right? You guys tell me you want brain rot, and then the second I actually give you what you guys request, well, that's like the second, like you all are like, no, like it's like you're screaming to the heavens, I'm merely a humble purveyor of brain rot, is what I'm saying. And every time I give it to you guys, it seems counterproductive. I don't know. All right. We are leftists? I mean, I guess. Now, folks, you're asking me for brain rot. And I mean, I have some ideas here. And I do want to know. Okay. Yeah. All right. You guys want brain rot. You guys want brain rot. Yeah, you sometimes you summon the eldritch deities beyond mortal ken, and sometimes you get something worse, something less explicable than the wildest horrors that haunt Cthulhu's nightmares. I am, of course, talking about Steven Crowder. Now, you guys have requested brain rot, and I'm more than happy to deliver this, because one of the things that you guys might not know if you don't follow Steven Crowder these days, and why would you? Steven's doing a dictator bracket. So we're going to watch him decide who he thinks the #1 dictator of all time is. And he, of course, calls this series Dictator Dick Off. It's not even a joke. Like, he's not even making a joke there. It's just like you could have done that with. I'm not even kidding. He calls it that. Dictator Dick Off. Like, you could have just made the joke with dictator. You didn't need the dick off. I mean, I guess you're face off, dick off, but like, yeah. Anyway, you guys chose this, not me.
Welcome to this day 2 of our great dictator.
Yeah, I'm not, because I'm beneficent and not a psychotic monster. I'm not making us watch the first part, which is another hour and a half of this. I'm only making you watch the second part, the other hour and a half of this.
Dick-off competition. We're down to our final 8. You can still place your bets on the remaining 8 at draftdictators.com. Of course, the official bookkeeper of dictator competitions.
You know, honestly,
Whoopsie.
that whoopsie's for you guys. That for biting off more than you can chew. You guys are like, oh yes, give us brain rot, mommy, and you know I gave you the brain rot, and now you're all sorry about it.
We are going to get to our final 8 bracket, narrow it down to 4-2, and declare the winner of the greatest or worst, depending on how you look at it, hopefully worst, dictator of all time. Let's get to day 2 of the great dictator Dick-Off.
Yeah,
So, with me today, before we get...
there's something about this that just seems really disrespectful. Or should I say dick respectful? There we go.
to the
Nailed
brackets,
it.
we have, of course,
Nailed the tone of the rot. Excellent. 10 out of 10.
Lane Gingersnap, head researcher here at Louder with Crowder.
Frame, so I figured
On audio, they can't hear you.
you have to say hi.
Oh, hello.
And if you move the mic closer,
Yeah, it helps if you
Can't
talk.
really. There's a chair here.
That's oh, you know what? It's because the prong, the wrong spot. And I'm sure you know by now. He ruins everything. But he's here today, and day 2 is Captain Morgan.
we're talking about dictators, and I ruin everything.
Well, you
I mean,
you rule
I mean, your comb over is really that bad, man.
the office finances with an iron fist.
oh, it's true. I'll
Yep.
take some notes.
That's why we call. You don't even know, but when you're not around the office, you don't even know what people call you.
He doesn't need to.
You seem
No, he
like
doesn't.
you were.
You know, given that Steven Crowder has a penchant for giving his employees like horrible nicknames, I don't really want to know what nickname they came up with for his number 2. Anything good tonight? No, only pain, because chat is a bunch of masochists.
Were about to tell me.
I wasn't gonna. Tell
Yeah,
you.
right, Tipster. He couldn't even restrain himself to like not show Hitler in the intro.
The penetrator. Now
What? Actually,
we have.
Guys, now I know that I might know a fair amount about, you know, sex and sex toys. Do you think Steven knows what he just said? Do you think he's aware of what that actually is, or is he just saying words? That's my big question right now. What did he say? He said that he said that his company's CEO's nickname that they call him when he's not around is the Penetrator. And I mean, that is gross, right? But like, I'm, you know, fairly familiar with the kink scene, and I'm just wondering if he is also familiar with that kink scene. That's all I'm wondering. Yeah, like, I don't know if you should be referencing things that happen in the privacy of the office, considering he allegedly goes around sharing unsolicited news and resting his dick on people's shoulders non-consensually. Yeah, right? Steven is very virgin-coded. Well, yeah, Steven is very virgin-coded, but, like, I think you might be familiar with the... How do I put this? I just need to confirm this real quick. I mean, Okay, like. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the penetrator is typically like a extraordinarily large phallic device used for sexy times. And it's like having a bad dragon mug at work. Exactly. Eddie, that's kind of my thought process right here.
That's kind of a compliment. So, and of course, because of our legal obligations, from HR, Sam is here.
Hi, Stephen. You'll notice that I'm going to have to write myself up because I'm wearing my Jewish garb here, but I wanted to make myself loud and proud today because Herr Scheisskopf, I think, is going to be back today, and you know, there's a lot of antagonism in the office.
Is that what it is? I thought it was a Meyer Lansky lookalike competition.
It is not, no.
No? Okay, well, you win. So, to bring... and of course, you know that we had to eliminate from the brackets because let's just be really clear. Toolman, of course, would be unfair to include him. Hitler, bad, horrible, right? So Hitler is the worst dictator of all time. There's no one who even comes close to Hitler, and I swear that I won't even insinuate that anyone here is as bad as Hitler.
It's true.
Hitler's awful. Hitler's bad. Yep. No one even comes close. So we didn't think it would be fair to use him in the Great Dictator pick-off. I'm sorry. It's difficult being...
People think this is funny.
Well,
Conservatives think this is hilarious.
And we do, however, have...
There's a bad dragon coffee mug. There probably should be if there's not.
No, he's not competing.
Yeah.
But we do have him as a measuring stick. So we actually compare these horrible dictators on our Hitler scale, as you saw us use yesterday. So we rate them on a scale from 1 to... I mean, numerous Hitlers. We really haven't put a cap on it. Here to present the final 8.
Oh, good. They're measuring dictators in terms of
Führer
Hitler.
himself. We have him in studio on retainer, Adolf Hitler.
Hello, brother.
Yes, you're back.
Hello, Julian.
Yes. Oh boy. I was.
Did you hear that he's proud?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not offended by this, but like, what are you thinking, man? This is absolutely a low, right? We're 3 minutes in. There's an Adolf Hitler chair. They have a guy coming in dressed as Adolf Hitler. They have a guy on set dressed as a Jewish person. Yeah, exactly. It was Crane. Like, this is too incoherent. Like, I'm just... How was there no one in the room to say no to any of this? You know, like, I joined at a great time. Yeah, just Vegas. It's a little bit of a weird one. Yeah, Steven Crowder's, just out of curiosity, how many views does this video have? This has, oh man, Steven. Guys. This video has 31,000 views. It was posted 5 days ago. Steven has a channel with 5.7 million subscribers. 5.7 million subscribers. And with almost a week of being on, this video's only gotten 31,000. Yeah, that is awful, man. How the cringy have fallen. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine what's driving people away from his content.
He's Jewish and gay.
Okay.
Oh,
That's
good.
a double suicide.
Okay, all right. You're lucky you took the day off.
He's Jewish and gay, haha.
So our final 8, let's just show these really quickly. You can show them is we have the Ayatollah, right? We've narrowed it down. to the Ayatollah, who's going to be going up against Mao. Stalin is up against Saddam Hussein. Pol Pot, I think, is, the favorite.
Steven, why is your microphone, like, being leftist right now?
Here at this point. Up against Castro. Kim Jong-il up against Papadoc. And Papadoc is the dark horse, right? The betting.
Literally and figuratively.
Yep. Yes.
It's like a 16 seed, right?
Yeah. I think the odds now at draftdictators.com have him at did they have him at a minus 900 underdog? Is that what it is?
That's what we ended up yesterday.
Okay, still
I
at
haven't seen
900.
if the lines moved today.
I don't think the lines have moved because we just started the program. So those are the final 8 brackets. We're going to narrow this down pretty quickly to the final 4. I guess before, do you have someone who you're betting on?
I thought slapping your dong on people's shoulders was great for views. Apparently not.
Overall, I've got to go with Pol Pot, I think.
Pol Pot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He killed a lot of people.
He did kill a lot. As a percentage, it is the highest that we.
It is the highest of the population. I actually visited the country, so I have some insight on the Pol Pot.
Well, you just had to mention it, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I went.
See this?
Yeah. It sounds pretty angry.
Yeah. I don't know.
I would do something about it.
Well, yeah, I know you. I don't. Let's
Give us no. Listen.
You see the Walter?
Hey, listen,
Yeah, I do.
listen.
I do.
Sign
You hear
of the cross. We're good.
Yeah. No, that's not. You're a pagan, aren't you?
I don't
No,
know.
technically he was Catholic.
No, he wasn't technically
He was
Catholic.
a Catholic adjacent.
Hold on a second. Do you hear that? It's the sound of us just losing our Walther sponsorship.
All I know is we're number 1.
Yeah. Right. I don't know what that means. Ayatollah, of course, versus Mao. But overall, you say Pol Pot lane?
Yeah.
No, I lost all the souls.
Mao
Damn
is
it.
the one I'm riding with here.
Mao.
Well,
Yep.
because I just like to imagine what Mao could not like to imagine.
Jeez. Yeah.
But
Wow.
if one were to imagine what he would have done in Pol Pot's position, I think Cambodia might not exist as an entity at all today.
That's probably true. But you could also say that about the Viet Cong with Pol Pot, kind of created the atmosphere of Pol Pot. But we don't have any Viet Cong here.
That we know of.
That's true. We don't know. It could be Viet Cong adjacent. And Sam, you can't bet. You're precluded from betting.
I am not taking part in this whole thing there.
Well, that's okay. Good, because we're not going to let you bet anyway. So
Yeah, it was our choice, not yours.
the Ayatollah and Mao. Let me just give you a couple. We're going to cycle through these pretty quickly. We went through this yesterday. Of course, all the references are available at loudwithcrowder.com. This was inspired by the fact that a lot of young people, they know about the Fuhrer, but they don't know about the rest of these dictators. I didn't learn about them in school. We kind of skimmed over Stalin, but Adolf Hitler left his mark, a bad one.
It's a good mark.
No, bad.
Yeah, it's bad. Hitler bad, just to be clear. And we wanted to ensure that everyone was able to educate themselves. So I do encourage you to go peruse the references. The Ayatollah, this person, of course, awful. Here we do, actually. We do have just a quick clip because we pulled these up. Here's the Ayatollah.
Guys, I don't know if I'm strong enough to make it through this. I genuinely, like, this is not good content. Like, I don't even know if this is good for me to, like, react to, honestly. Like, he's like, yeah, this is Ayatollah Khomeini. This is Pol Pot. Which one killed more people? Like, he's just, it's an arbitrary ranking of, like, dictators. It's wild, man.
Ayatollah, actually, it's a video, I think. Sam from HR knows this. That's right. He was in charge of the state without actually, the interesting fact about the Ayatollah, without actually being a government official. Let's roll the clip, Supreme.
What is your own role in this government that is to come?
I would not have any position in the future government as such, being the president or a prime minister. And my job is not to be as such. I will be some sort of supervising their activities. I will give them guidance. And if I see some deviation or some mistake, I will remind them how to correct it, give the general guidance.
You would be, in effect, the strong man of Iran.
به این ترتیب شما مرد قوی ایران خواهید بود.
اینطور فرض کنید.
You may assume so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they had chairs in 1979 or a couch. Why are they all sitting on the floor?
Also, they're using that term strong man very loosely.
Very, very loosely.
Well, unless you're a woman in a hijab, then he was very strong.
It's true.
Yeah, his right hand was exceptionally strong.
You got to keep your Ayatollah hand strong.
It's funny because beating women and Steven, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you legal advice, but I am gonna say it might not be the best idea when you're going through divorce proceedings with, you know, your spouse, who has you on video and you have admitted to threatening to quote fuck her up. I mean, I guess it's the actual quote is I will fuck you up. But probably not great to be making domestic violence jokes. Probably gonna come back to bite you in court. You know, again, not a lawyer, just humble advice from a mere tiny YouTuber.
Ayatollah ain't easy. All right.
I don't think that's a thing.
We're going to go quickly narrow this down to the 4 because we want to get a little more granular. Between the Ayatollah and Mao, certainly down to our final 4 bracket is going to be Mao.
Oh.
For sure.
Can't really argue with that one.
Nope.
Yeah.
Adolf, let's put Mao in the final bracket.
For Ayatollah.
I don't know about that.
What are
You hated communists, didn't you?
You did.
You know, but the whole enemy of my...
Kind of a mutual respect.
Yeah, kind of a mutual respect,
Really?
you know, admiration. We also, I mean, the Fuhrer, as horrible as he is, Hitler bad, right? We all know Hitler bad.
Hitler bad?
But he has earned his theme song.
Bad.
All right, next portion of this bracket, we have Stalin and Saddam Hussein. We have Joseph Stalin and Saddam Hussein. We talked about this again yesterday. Stalin. All right. Well, you know what? Really quickly, we're just gonna, since we're knocking out, we know we're gonna knock out Saddam Hussein.
Well, hold on. Give him his due. He did kill his own countrymen with mustard gas, I believe.
He did. Yeah, he
Was
did.
it mustard gas or was it just a chemical?
It
That's-
was,
Maybe not mustard
I don't
gas?
know exactly the component.
It was a chemical
was a-
attack on his own people. I mean, that does put him in a category, I think, by himself, other than maybe Assad now. But
Yes. But Saddam Hussein, some quick, fast facts. Let's see. What do we have here? Oh, yeah, that's right. He did have a massive car collection. And he was famous.
Yeah, I can't. This is not. I'm immediately regretting my choices in order to that we're trying to make you regret your choices. I'm regretting your regret, and I want to apologize. Can we change to a completely different piece of brain rot? Because I can't handle this. It's so banal and like uninteresting. Like it's just uninteresting fascism. Like I feel like everything after like Hitler marched on screen in this video, like literally Hitler, it's I can't do more. I can't do it. I can't do more. I'm not strong enough. But you know what? I believe in you guys. You guys are strong enough to hit the follow button on Twitch, the subscribe button on YouTube, the like button on the YouTube stream. I believe in the power of YouTube chat and Twitch chat and Riverboat chat. Okay, I believe in the power of humanity, in the goodness that resides in all people's hearts. And I believe that you too can help uplift this stream, okay? Yeah, like he doesn't have like you can tell like Steven Crowder does not give a shit about this topic, like at all. At all. It's embarrassing. Let's see here.
There was a
All right. Okay, folks. Oh, you know, I had forgotten about Armored Skeptic. Okay. Maybe I can spare you the Piers Morgan. Well, let's see. What is he up to? All right. What is he up to? Pop culture is psychological warfare. The media is evil. The crop circle riddle solved. You know, he's not really putting out a ton of content. I'm not, like, super inclined to go this way. What about... Oh, God. Okay.
Hey.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff coming out of the Spirit Science channel. All right. Let's see here. Maybe we'll do the their history of the world. I think I would enjoy that again. Let's see. Spirit Science movies. All right. It's time for us to learn about the history of humanity, okay? Yep, he made a video 12 years ago called Spirit Science 12, the Human History Movie, and you know what? It has a picture of Jesus giving a thumbs up on it, and in the background, Thoth. So, you know, I think this is gonna go places. All right, here we go. Disclaimer: if you believe any of the things that he is about to say, you are a fool. Please do not. Choose not to.
Over the last few thousand years, we have warped our own history. Our stories of the past have been changed, altered, mistranslated, and completely been misunderstood as we rounded the curve on the precession of the equinox. Modern views of our history account for many things, but completely dismiss many very important pieces in the puzzle. For example, the pyramids of Giza. There is no modern theory that accounts for how these could have been made. Individually, each block cannot be pulled.
Man, we're 20 seconds in, man. We're 20 seconds in. There's no theory of how they could have done this. I mean, 1, round stones. Roll them across rounded surfaces. 2, and this is probably the most easy to even imagine one, you float them down the Nile. You put them in boats. Boats, you see, have the capacity to transport extraordinarily heavy weights with remarkably minimal effort. The quarry for the stones is literally right on the Nile for a reason. Oh, it's not just aliens, Vegas. It's never just aliens with spirit science.
Even with 50 men pulling it, let alone drag it for hundreds of miles and then stack them on top of each other 450 feet in the air in such a precise way.
They didn't stack them. They didn't like lift them up and stack them. They made ramps that then they unmade. Come on. Like, I just know how they did it from a basic understanding of history and a basic understanding of geometry. I think they could have figured that out. What are we watching? We're watching the real history of the world.
Way that even modern technology can't achieve, not to mention having it lined up.
We can build pyramids. Where did this idea come from that, like, human beings can't build pyramids? We're capable of doing it. It's just not a terribly useful shape for us to build when it's far more efficient to build in rectangles or squares.
Precisely with both Orion's belt, a golden mean, and Fibonacci spiral, and be a primary nodal point of every sacred site on the planet. And that's just one example.
Primary nodal point of every sacred site on the planet. Uh-huh. Sure, dog. You're not gonna go into what that means, are you? No? Okay.
Our history is not what we think. Many things that we've been led to believe to be true simply...
Oh, also, folks, consider dropping those sweet, sweet subs and donos.
...is not. This has got to be the biggest. The field of archaeology recently saw some monumental discoveries that are rocking the foundation of what we think we know about ourselves. Many ancient cities such as Babylon, Erech, and Akkad that were written about in the Bible and other ancient texts were always thought to be myths because no one could prove they existed. Then, one of them was found. This led to...
Math and geometry is for nerds. And I mean nerds, not weirdos into spirit science, and if I hazard a guess, race and IQ science? Something tells me the dude adheres to that.
It could be. I have no idea, but all I know is that his history takes are god-awful. Honestly, Nathan Grisham, I think with a minimal amount of effort, people could pass off the events of the Stargate television series, Stargate SG-1, as actual, like, conspiracy theory. I think that is actually something that people could do, and frankly, I think maybe we have, to some degree, a duty to do that, to try and, like, get people in these kinds of thought processes to realize how silly they are. You know, maybe we just need to start pushing in, like conspiracy circles that Stargate SG-1 was a documentary. God.
Finding another, and then another. Inside one of these cities, archaeologists found thousands of cylindrical clay tablets hidden deep within the earth under this ancient city. The tablets were completely covered in text, written in cuneiform, and tell an ancient story that spans back over hundreds of thousands of years on this planet, describing the history of the Earth and the origins of the human race in great detail.
Oh, wow.
Now, the first thing we all want to do is just say that they were making things up. They didn't know the history of Earth, and they were simply creating tales to explain where they came from. However, if this was true, how can we explain how they knew so many things about the universe that would seem impossible to know?
Coincidence? Frankly, coincidence, and also, like, knowing some of the fundamentals allow you to more accurately guess at, like, larger scale, like, answers. Like,
not only did the Dogons know all about the distant planets in the solar system, but so did the Sumerians. They described them all in great detail in these Sumerian records. They also knew about the precession of the equinox.
Citation needed on that one. Okay, I want the Sumerians to explain in great detail how Pluto is a dwarf planet. If the Sumerian tablets describe the difference between a dwarf planet and, like, a planet, then I'll grant that point. But I don't think that is the case.
That's a tough one for a historian to understand, because it takes over 2,000 years of continuous observation to actually learn that the Earth has a wobble. The Sumerians had this information from day one of their civilization. A man named Zacharias Sitchin spent a long time transcribing these texts and had put them all together in his books, but many others have also done the same, and the interpretations are always very similar. Not only that, but Thoth has also shared information about this with us, and his account matches the Sumerian records. Adonis and other channelings discuss it as well. If you see all of these records and sources, there is a huge connection between the stories. Now, this story spans back hundreds of thousands of years into our past. It talks about Tiamat and Nibiru, the Nephilim, seeding the human race, Adam and Eve, and the children of Lemuria. This portion of the...
Oh yeah, you know, all those things.
This is some greater brain rot. I knew Crowder was an idiot, but this is taking it to a whole new level. Oh my goodness. It's BWA time.
Lady Domino, thank you for the $15 dono. I very, very much appreciate that. Thank you so goddamn much. And Midnight All Night. I don't remember if I said thank you for your dono, for your sub over on Twitch, but thank you so goddamn much. Yeah, guys, this is about to go places. I think this is the video that describes where Jews come from in his mythos. And,
story is really interesting, but not the most crucial to know. We're not going to be covering this at this time. We are, however, going to be picking up the story at the end of Lemuria, and discussing the events of Atlantis up to present day. What I'm going to tell you is a mix of what these records say, along with what Thoth has told us for some finer details. Please have your own experience while watching this. I'm not going to tell you that this is fact. I am simply saying, decide for yourself.
I'm just saying it's some really interesting ideas. I'm not saying it's real, guys.
There was a time, long ago, when humans existed at a very high level of consciousness. We were interdimensional and were very psychic. We communicated through thought and emotion, much like how animals do rather than speaking or writing, which would seem very primitive. We lived primarily on a large string of islands called
Do we got any citations on that? No? Okay.
Lemuria, but there was a consciousness shift. We moved up in consciousness, and the islands of Lemuria sank beneath the oceans. At the time of this shift, a new continent rose out of the waters. We called it Atlantis. Back in the early 1900s, the spiritual path of the United States was similar to what's happening today. People began to learn about meditation and study ancient lands like Atlantis and Lemuria. We actually found quite a bit of evidence that Lemuria existed, and it had to do with coral. See, the ocean floor does rise and fall. Coral.
Did we find evidence of that?
Can I make TTS sound like it's having too much fun? Oh, subs. For the Doino dog.
Samus, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. That's extraordinarily kind of you. And also, stop trying to be smutty with text-to-speech. Text-to-speech is too pure for this world.
Coral can exist up to 150 feet under the surface of the water. In 1910, the surface of the ocean was probably higher because they were able to see coral rings heading away from Easter Islands for a great distance. These rings were estimated to be found at 1,800 feet, which means that for them to have existed, they would have had to be much higher and sunk slowly. Probably more important, they also found the exact same fauna and flora from the Hawaiian Islands all the way to the Easter Islands. This is a great distance, but if you look at a map, you'll see a long string. That string, according to Thoth, used to run along the western shores of Lemuria. It is only on these islands that have the same flora.
What do you mean, according to Thoth? We have people who study tectonic plates. We know where those came from. We know about like the movement of continents over long, protracted periods of time. What are you doing? Who the fuck is Thoth? Okay, look. We may or may not get there in this video, okay? We may or may not get that. I'm gonna summarize. Thoth is the bird guy from Egypt who long pre-existed the Egyptians and is apparently slumbering underneath the pyramids alongside his hyper-advanced alien spacecraft. That's what's going on in the spirit science universe, okay? And it's not real, obviously, but this guy thinks it is. And the source is crack pipe. The source is crack pipe throughout this entire thing. This non-stop crack hours, okay? We may or may not get to who Thoth is in this video, but I guarantee there's another one that goes into like the whole mythos. Is he a system lord? I think he would be considered a system lord, yeah.
Flora and fauna. Same trees, bugs, bacteria, everything.
What is
Science can
up
only
here?
explain this if there were closer
Why
land bridges between
is
these
this an
islands at one
area
point.
in Elden
Although
Ring?
we were studying this at that time, World War I began soon after, and we lost interest in spirituality and the ancient lands for a very long time. After the sinking of Lemuria and the rising of Atlantis, at first the human race became scattered.
That's right. You thought Atlantis got sunk? Nah, bitch. Lemuria got sunk, and then Atlantis came up, and then Atlantis sunk. Okay, get with the program. You're operating in 3 dimensions. Okay, this video is operating in 12.
We moved to various islands and continents all over the world because we didn't.
Wait, what? What? You can't keep up with the breakneck pace of just absolute horseshit?
Have a home. Yet. We didn't know where to go. At that time, there were about 1,000 humans at a very high consciousness, more than all of the rest. They were called the Nakals. Today,
guys, it's very important to understand that being a human at a very high consciousness is very, very, very different from being a human today with your petty low consciousnesses.
Today, we know them as Ascended Masters. The Nakals began preparing Atlantis to be our new home. They projected their energies across the surface of the continent in the form of the Tree of Life, not with 10 circles, but with 12, an extra on top on the island of Udal, and an extra on the bottom in the water. There were 10 components on the mainland, and even though it extended over hundreds of miles on the surface, it was projected to the accuracy of a single atom. We chose to move to Atlantis because of the Kundalini. In humans, the Kundalini is often referred to as the energy serpent that runs up and down your spine. When activated,
yeah, you know, that thing, the serpent in your spine.
it provides an immense amount of energy through all of the chakras. The Earth itself also has a Kundalini because the Earth is alive,
dumbasses.
like an organism, running from the center of the planet to a specific place on the surface. Wherever the Kundalini...
Again, I just love the constant, like... The constant, like, matter-of-factness with which he speaks. Ah, yes, you know, the energy serpent that runs up and down your spine. What? Anyway, moving on.
Kundalini resides, the people there become the spiritual leaders of the world. The Earth chose Atlantis to be the...
Yeah, you thought the Pope? You thought the Pope was chosen by the Catholic Church? Nah, the Pope was chosen by ley lines, bitch. Get with the program.
New energetic center of the planet. After Atlantis, the Kundalini moved to the mountains of Tibet, which is why the Buddhists were the leaders in pure spirituality for the last 13,000 years. It was a very pure place. It moved again within the last 10 years, but that's a story for another time. If you want to read more, check out the book The Serpent of Light by Drunvalo Melchizedek. Suddenly, in a single day, the Nakals breathed life into the Tree of Life on the surface of Atlantis. This created vortexes of energy rotating out of each and every circle. Once the vortexes were established, the children of Lemuria began to be called forth. Millions upon millions of Lemurians who had settled all across the planet began to be pulled toward Atlantis. A great migration began. However, the Lemurian body of consciousness had only reached the age of 12 as a planetary consciousness. Because we were right-brained, we were a female species, like a 12-year-old girl. And some of our centers weren't working yet. They had worked with...
Yeah, you guys following this? You know, because of our species, we had the brains of 12-year-old girls. Anyway, moving past that at breakneck pace.
These energies, but only mastered 8 of the 10. Each migrating Lemurian was attracted to one of these 8 centers on Atlantis, depending on the nature of the individual. There, they settled and began to build cities. That left 2 vortexes with nobody using them, not a single person. These 2 vortexes were pulling life toward them, and in life, you can't have an empty place. Life will find a way to fill it. Similar to if you were driving along a freeway, following another car, and you drop too far behind, someone will fill the place. That's exactly what happened on Atlantis. Though the Lemurians had only filled 8 of the vortex areas, Mayan records state clearly that there were 10 cities in Atlantis when it fell. You can see these records in the Troano document, which is now located in the British Museum. This
document is not about that.
document is estimated to be 3,500 years old, and it describes in detail the sinking of Atlantis. To fill these 2 empty vortexes,
it does not.
According to Thoth, 2 extraterrestrial races stepped in. Not 1, but 2 completely different races.
Yep, that's right. We got aliens now. You thought you were safe? We're 7 minutes into this hour-long video. The aliens are now. There are 2 different alien species, all right? This is pure, undiluted, absolute nonsense. It is. And this channel has like 2 million subscribers because it is the center of a cult. And people genuinely believe this shit. I've actually had people in my chat be like, yeah, I got suckered into this for a while. It was really, like, compelling, and I don't get it, but I'm glad some people got out.
The first race were the Hebrews, coming from our future. Thoth says that they came from off-planet, but we don't know where exactly. The Hebrews were kind of like a kid who went through 5th grade and didn't make it, so they had to do that grade over again. They learned all the math, the left brain stuff, but they didn't get the right brain aspect of evolving consciousness, the doing. They didn't graduate to the next level of evolution, so they had to do it again. They knew a lot of things that we didn't know yet and brought many concepts and ideas to us that we weren't aware of yet. Now, if this is true, this would explain quite a few things about the Hebrew people in general. They seem to have many sacred geometries hidden within their...
Oh boy. We're really... okay, he took no time to get to this, did he? Yeah, like, oh, alright. Okay, alright.
their culture. It also puts perspective on the story of Exodus. Perhaps Moses incarnated into that lifetime to free the Hebrews because they were not direct descendants of humans and were being treated unfairly. Or could it be that Moses was visited by an ascended master of the Hebrews who guided him to free their people? Given what we know about dimensions and consciousness, it definitely puts a fresh perspective on old stories that didn't make much sense. We could talk about this more, but let's continue for now.
Maybe it
There were no problems caused by the Hebrews coming to Atlantis. They actually benefited our evolution. The other race that stepped in caused big problems. These beings came from the nearby planet of Mars. See, according to Thoth, Mars looked very much like Earth a little less than 1 million years ago. It was beautiful. It had oceans and water and trees that were just fantastic. But something happened to them, and it has to do with something called the Lucifer experiment. From the very beginning of creation...
That's right, we're about to get Satan, boys. Let's go.
And everything is simply an experiment. Creation itself was just consciousness creating and inhabiting itself in that creation. There is no divine plan. Spirit can do whatever it wants. Having said that, if Spirit decides to cut itself off from the rest of consciousness and create a separate reality on its own, it can do that too. This is called the Lucifer experiment. Because Spirit is God, it can do this. There is nothing wrong with that. We've kind of been led to believe that Lucifer is evil and the devil. This just isn't true. Lucifer is just another means of perceiving the reality. It is not a unity perception of oneness, but rather a duality perception of two-ness. There's a flower of life pattern for Lucifer as well, but that's a big topic for another time. Anytime the Lucifer experiment has been attempted in the universe, it always ends in failure. The species will cut itself off from love and will become incredibly male, left-brained. What always ends up happening is that everyone becomes very greedy. There is no compassion for one another, and everyone ends up fighting until they end up killing themselves. More than 1 million years ago, the beings on Mars joined the Lucifer experiment, and it failed dramatically. Basically,
yeah, you know, the like a 1 billion years ago during the Mars Wars.
They cut themselves off from the unity of the universe and created a separate reality. When the Martians severed the love bond, they became pure male, logical beings with no emotions. What happened on Mars?
Yeah. When they severed the love, you heard that right. When the Martians severed the love bond, they became pure males.
Was that they ended up fighting. Mars became a battleground. Eventually, it became clear that Mars was not going to survive. They blew their atmosphere away and destroyed the surface of the planet. Nova recently did an episode on planetary magnetics, and they found some interesting things about Mars. The planet didn't have a magnetic system, however the surface was magnetized, implying that at one point it did, but that something happened. Now, we've been discussing the star tetrahedron before, and now I want to give you a brief understanding of the Merkaba. The Merkaba was known in ancient times as the Chariot of Ascension.
Oh yeah, the Merkaba is this universe version of a spaceship. Anyway.
It is the star tetrahedral energy field around the body. All around the world, there are references to this in ancient texts. When activated to its full potential, the Merkaba, which is both a tool and part of your being, can be used to do the impossible, included but not limited to changing dimensions and traveling through the universe. Before Mars was destroyed, they built huge tetrahedral pyramids. They built 3, 4, and 5-sided pyramids, eventually building a complex.
I'm just throwing this out there. These are not perfectly. These are not perfect shapes. Okay, these are shapes roughly approximating a natural formation. Again, this is not a city. This is not a face. This is not whatever the hell a Tholus is.
That was able to build a synthetic Merkaba. After 1 million years or so, it's been eroded, but the proof is there. Now, because the Martians were severed from the Unity consciousness, they couldn't create a living Merkaba. They simply used it as a tool. They created a synthetic Merkaba to travel in time and find a new home. A small group of Martians tried to get away from Mars before it was destroyed, and that place they found was Earth. About 65,000 years in our past. They saw this little vortex sitting there, just pulling in life, with no one in it. They didn't ask permission. Being part of the Lucifer experiment, they just said, alright, let's do it.
Okay. Why? Again, if Spirit can do whatever the fuck it wants, like, why is that a problem?
And they stepped onto that vortex, and in doing so, they joined and changed our evolutionary path. Thoth's father, Thome, was one of the...
Yeah. I forget, did he already mention that, like, the Martians are Jews? Because basically what he's saying is that 65,000 years ago, the space Jews arrived on Earth to steal and usurp the spiritual life force of the planet. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, like, ancient texts or anything, but this is basically the plot of Dragon Ball. Except that this is... in this adaptation, the Jews are the Saiyans, apparently. Next time on... I can't say that joke. Let's go.
Nacals who set up Atlantis on the island of Udal. That island, the top of the Tree of Life, was the brain of Atlantis, and on it was a small city called Poseidon. This city is what Plato was discussing when he said that Poseidon bore 10 children, the 10 circles on the Tree of Life. Poseidon was made of 3 rings painted in black, red, and white stones, and it was the symbol for Atlantis. The inner circle represented the Nacals, the middle circle were the priesthood, called the Maya, and the outer circle represented the regular people of Atlantis. We'll come back to this down the road. There were only a few thousand Martians who came to Earth through the synthetic Merkaba. The first thing they did when they arrived in Atlantis was try to take over the continent. They tried to declare war and invade. However, they were vulnerable due to their small numbers, compared to the millions of Atlanteans, and we finally subdued them. We were able to stop them from conquering us, but we could not send them back. When this happened on our evolutionary path, we now had the planetary consciousness of a 14-year-old girl. The Martians...
Kakarot Stein and Vegeta Field, the classic duo. Sorry, Vegeta Feld. There we go. I can't get over the fact that by this time, our planetary consciousness had the level of a 14-year-old girl. What the fuck does that mean? What does that mean?
were an incredibly male species, and also very old. So what you had was a 14-year-old girl being taken over by a 60 or 70-year-old man. We had no choice in the matter. The Martians just stepped in and said, like it or not, we're here. They didn't care what we thought or felt about it. Really, it was no different from what the settlers of North America did to the Native Americans.
Yeah, so this is where the anti-Semitism comes in real hard. I mean, like, you might have been like, oh, well, is it just like silly space stuff? Nope, it's deeply, deeply anti-Semitic. Is this any different from Nazi propaganda? Code Mode, it's interesting that you say that, because no, Ancient Aliens is literally a myth propagated by the Nazis to prop up their eugenics arguments about the superiority of the Aryan race. That's where Ancient Aliens as like a conspiracy comes from. And this is just basically taking that and running with it. Spirit science is just like, yo, that that sounds dope. Let's just mishmash that with a bunch of like Eastern religions, and we're good to go. All right.
Once the initial conflict was over, it was agreed that the Martians would try and understand this female thing they lacked, this emotional feeling which they had none of at all. Things more or less settled for a while, but the Martians slowly began to implement their left-brain technologies, which the Atlanteans knew nothing about. One after the other, the Martians kept putting out these left brain inventions until the Atlanteans slowly began to see things through their left brain. We slowly began to become a male species. The Martians gained control, bit by bit, until eventually they had all of the power, as was their intention. The animosity between Atlanteans and the Martians never subsided.
Yeah, so again, just to recap here, a small cabal of Martians began infiltrating society and slowly, morphed the brain matter of society, twisted it with their dark magics, into being more like them. I wonder where we've got that conspiracy before. I wonder.
Not even till the end of Atlantis. They hated each other. The Atlanteans were shoved down and treated like inferiors. It was like a marriage that the female component didn't like, but the male component didn't really care if she liked it or not. It remained this way for a very long time, until about 26,000 years ago, when the next phase slowly began.
Okay.
Before we continue, we have to
Citation
talk
needed?
about polar shifts. See, in the 1930s, Edgar Cayce was channeling information for a geologist when he stopped and he said, "There's something you should know."
Oh, yeah, you know how geologists do their research with spirit channelers. Yeah, I'm always saying this. This is why you can't trust geologists. They're always not going out into the field and like looking at rocks, and instead they're consulting the spirits. Anyway,
in the near future, the Earth's poles are
Just
going
like
to
Indiana
shift.
Jones.
Cayce was a brilliant man with a very strong connection to higher dimensions, where he communicated with other beings for the human race. Ultimately, it was because of his channelings that the belief system called New Age was created. This is
Fight
again
the
just putting
jars.
what he was doing into boxes of understanding, because no one else understood what he was doing at that time.
Just makes me
Nevertheless,
feel bad
when
to
Cayce
fight these
talked,
little guys.
people listened. Geologists began exploring the possibility of a polar shift, and they found something remarkable. A string of major pieces of evidence came forth and lent tremendous weight to what Cayce was saying, and they have now changed the world's view on the subject. Scientists believed that if there was going to be a physical pole shift, there would also be a change in the magnetic poles. Through studying lava beds, geologists were able to see where the planetary
Lava
magnetics
beds.
were when the lava beds hardened at certain depths. They found that the earlier magnetic poles were not where they were now, but in Hawaii. The last shift that took place was 13,000 years ago, and we will get there in the story soon. They did another test and
thank
found
God.
that it had shifted
I
again
was on the edge of my
26,000
seat.
years ago as well. Scientists also learned that polar shifts happen very quickly. In a single day, the magnetics would do a complete flip, or turn 90 degrees. There's that number again. And within 24 hours, the sun would be rising differently than it did the previous day. This shift has happened hundreds of times over the last 100 million years on Earth, but it's speeding up now and happening faster and faster. Now only 13,000 years between each shift. A whole new viewpoint is beginning to be understood. From space, would this not appear as a pulse? Now, there's a lot more to talk about with polar shifts, but I'm going to give you the basics. A scientist named Charles Hapgood was studying this at great detail because the leading theory behind what caused polar shifts was still underdeveloped at the time. He came up with a theory that demonstrated to be possible through various experiments. Through these experiments, they learned that the surface of the Earth, the crust, could slip over the main mass of the Earth, which continues its rotation as if nothing happened. The crust would rotate and spin out of control until eventually it settles again in a new location aligned with the new magnetics. During this time, there are massive earthquakes and tsunamis and devastations that rock the world. Doesn't that sound a bit like the destruction described in the Book of Revelations?
No.
Now, I don't want to freak anyone out. Besides Edgar
No,
Cayce's
it
account,
doesn't,
many
actually.
other ancient prophecies, including Nostradamus and Mayan prophecies, have talked about polar shifts in one way or another. And modern science is becoming increasingly aware that there is going to be a polar shift in our near future, which is lining up with our consciousness shift, though they don't take that aspect into account. It's funny actually, a while back, Nova did 2 reports on polar shifts, and both times NASA shut them down. Then recently, Nova released a new video called Earth's...
Oh damn, you mean You mean NASA's behind a bunch of lies? Man, maybe this flat Earth nonsense I keep hearing about is actually straight fire. The jars did nothing wrong. No, that's not what happens with me. No, none of this is what happens with anything. It's like someone learned our language and then just didn't understand any of it.
Magnetic storm. That video shows all of the evidence for pole shifts without actually using the words pole shift. It's almost as if a specific company doesn't want us knowing about this and the evidence that's been brought forth.
It's a government
polar shifts
agency.
are directly related to the magnetics of the planet as well. Planetary magnetics are supposed to look like this, but the reality is much different. Our magnetics have been weakening over the last 500 years or so, and today they look a little more like this. It was the magnetics becoming more and more warped that's causing many of the problems we've seen in the last 20 years. Birds follow the magnetics of the planet to migrate, and they've been ending up in places they shouldn't be. Whales were continually beaching themselves in the 90s because they followed these magnetics, which led them to land where there should have been water. As for humans, you know how on the night of the full moon there are more rapes, murders, and violent crimes than any other night of the lunar cycle?
Why are you saying that like that's something everyone knows? Why are you saying that like it's common knowledge? Why are you saying that like, oh yeah, we all know that? Why are you saying it like you expect a response like that? Because nobody knows that. And as far as I know, it's just not true. So, like,
Well, the moon affects the magnetics of the Earth, slightly. But the magnetics are so warped right now, it's affecting how we think and act as a planet. Our collapse of social structure is related to the geomagnetics of the Earth. Or perhaps it's the other way around. There's one other thing that we need to discuss about polar shifts. They always line up with a consciousness shift. They are interrelated. Filth lived on Atlantis for a very long time, and he told us that he saw the Earth shift 5 times, watching the sun rise.
Oh, well, you know, if Thoth the Atlantean saw it happen, you know, that's... It must be so.
In the east, and then the west, then the east, then the west. This is how to explain why during a consciousness shift at the end of Lemuria, it sank beneath the oceans and Atlantis rose. If the crust was spinning randomly around the planet, many geological events such as continents rising and falling would take place. Now that we have an understanding of polar shifts...
Wait, that does take place.
We can continue with this drama on Atlantis. 26,000 years ago, we were exactly where we were today on the precession of the equinox. We had gone through our falling asleep phase, and we were about to begin waking up. It was at this point that there was a small consciousness shift. We actually went down in consciousness, not up. A piece of Atlantis about the size of Rhode Island sank into the ocean. This caused a tremendous amount of fear within the Atlanteans, because they thought they were going to lose the whole continent, like what happened with Lemuria. Because of the consciousness shift, one of the bigger things they lost was their connection to the future. They couldn't foresee big events such as the potential sinking of their home. After about 200 years, this fear began to subside. Now, in both the Bible and the Sumerian records, the accounts of Adam, Eve, and all of their children were recorded to have exceptionally long lifespans, like 900 years or so. So 200 years for us back then is like 20 years for us today. We'll explain how we got there.
Why did you add music to this? Like, it's the scene of like a, I don't know, like some kind of Ace Attorney anime adaptation where like Ace is about to crack the case.
Soon. Things kind of settled for a while, and then between 13,000 and 16,000 years ago, a comet approached the Earth.
Yeah.
Because we were living at a high consciousness across all dimensions, the Atlanteans became aware of it before it hit. A great conflict occurred in Atlantis. The Martians, who were in the minority even though they were in control, wanted to blow it out of the sky with their laser technology. However, the Nacals had learned of the comet's true nature, and the Atlanteans protested. They said that the comet was in divine order. They had to allow it to take place naturally. Let it hit the Earth. That's what's supposed to happen. The Martians fought the Atlanteans, but in the end they gave in. The Martians agreed to let it hit the Earth. When the time arrived, it came screaming into the atmosphere, plunging into the Atlantic Ocean just off to the western shores of Atlantis, near where Charleston, South Carolina is now, only that was at the bottom of the ocean at the time. The remnants of the comet are now scattered across 4 states, and science has definitely determined that it hit at least 12,000 years ago, if not more. They're still finding pieces today. Although the main portion struck near Charleston, a few fragments actually hit the main body of Atlantis, crashing into an area right where the Martians were living, killing a huge portion of their population. They were pissed. They said, "It's all over, we're divorcing you, and we're gonna do whatever we want. You can do what you want, but we will never listen to you again." We know this whole bit. We've seen it in divorced families throughout the world. And the children? Well, look at our modern world today. We are the children. You can guess what the Martians did next.
fuck.
Their primary interface with the reality was control, and when their anger rose to meet their desire for control, they decided to take over the Earth. They began to once again create a complex like the one they built on Mars long ago to try and create another synthetic Merkaba. If they had succeeded,
What I get
they would
for
have gained control
believing
over everything on the
randos.
planet. The only thing was, around 50,000 Earth years had passed since they had built a Merkaba, and they didn't quite remember how to do it. But they thought they did. The Martians built the buildings in Atlantis.
Why, again, the delivery of this is what's just so baffling to me. Like, the matter-of-factness about it. Just like, but they thought they did. Set up pyramids, install flux capacitor, laugh maniacally. Huh.
They set up the whole experiment, threw the switch, and lost control. The destruction was immense. In this reality, you can hardly make a greater error than to create an out-of-control Merkaba. The experiment began to rip open the dimensional levels. Not the higher ones, but the lower ones. To give an analogy, if you took a knife and slit open your stomach, the stomach acids would seep into other parts of the body that it's not supposed to be in. That's like ripping open the dimensions.
What? I am positive. I have a degree in English, okay? I'm positive. You could have found a much better analogy than that. That analogy does not make sense.
Martians almost destroyed the Earth. The environmental disaster we are experiencing today is nothing in comparison, though today's disasters are a direct result of these events. Because of this tear in the dimensional levels, a huge number of lower dimensional spirits and beings were thrown out of their comfort zone and into these higher levels. They were forced into a world that they did not know or understand. To survive, they needed bodies, and began automatically entering into the bodies of people. For every human body, there were hundreds of lower dimensional spirits inhabiting them. These beings were Earthlings, like us, but very different, not coming from this dimension. It was a catastrophe, probably the biggest the Earth has ever seen.
Okay, I'm pretty sure this is what ended the dark age of technology. I'm pretty sure this is Warhammer 40K lore right here. All right.
The reason the Nicals were special wasn't just because of their incredibly high consciousness, making them like guides of Atlantis.
Hey, Dragonfly.
They also had achieved what today we call immortality. Let's just say they figured out a way to...
Well, they had achieved what we call immortality. Why are you doing air quotes? Like why? Everything around this makes no sense to me. I spit my drink out. Don't you hate when you make an oopsie whoopsie and bungle a Merkaba? Yeah, I imagine this is what this is the thing the first guy to wreck a Merkaba said.
Whoopsie.
There we go.
To keep their body healthy and young.
Oh yeah, chat. Are any of you in trouble right now? Just remember.
The next time you get in trouble, call a crackhead.
You know, I feel like that's what we're watching right now. Also, folks, we've been going for an hour and a half. If you're enjoying the show, hit the follow button on Twitch, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like the goddamn YouTube stream, and consider dropping those sweet, sweet subs and donos. Let's go. OS Crane, do you watch Luton? Do you watch Luton videos? Because I do. That's my main exposure to Warhammer lore.
For as long as they chose, and could choose to pass on whenever they desired it. When reincarnating, they do not suffer the great memory loss that we do when we incarnate. They did it through their expanded consciousness and tantric interdimensional sex meditations. This is how Thoth was a priest king of Atlantis for thousands of years and stayed on Earth until 15 years ago when he gave all of his memories and understanding about sacred geometry to a man named Drunvalo Melchizedek.
Yeah, you know.
The Merkaba is formed out of 3 star tetrahedrons overlaid on top of each other. 2 of them are counter-rotating and the third is stationary. When the Merkaba is formed with the unity consciousness, it is formed internally with love. When it is formed externally through the Lucifer experiment, it does not have that love, and can become unstable very quickly. The Martians' attempt at controlling the world took place on one of the small islands in the west of Atlantis. This place today is known as the Bermuda Triangle. It's a triangle because the top of the stationary tetrahedron...
Yeah, you thought we weren't going to talk about the Bermuda Triangle, you fool, you buffoon, you absolute limerick of a human being. Like, you thought we weren't going to do that? You fools. No, wait. No,
Bam,
no
bam,
waiting.
bam, oochie, bam, 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 oochie, bam, dogs. For the dogs.
Salmon Moose, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. That is incredibly generous of you. God damn. Marina over in YouTube chat, thank you for the $10 super chat or $9.99 super chat. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. YouTube representing in chat. And, goddamn, Salmon Moose. And now that I have access to the emotes.
How can we all have died
soundboard.
at the same time?
Hell yeah, let's go. The Bermuda Triangle isn't even a real thing. Are you even watching this video about human history? It's pretty well documented as a thing. The space males.
The Merkaba is actually sticking out of the water there, which causes a huge electromagnetic imbalance.
Yeah, dummies. Did you never notice the corner of the Merkaba sticking out of the Bermuda Triangle? God, you need to elevate your dimensional consciousnesses. Come on, you dinguses.
In that area. Many planes and boats have reported to have gone missing there. They just vanished without a trace. The imbalance is multidimensional, and in many cases, these ships and planes have been sucked into different dimensions, never to be seen again. That Merkaba is still there on the seafloor today, but from what I know, it's going to be corrected soon. The Nacals did their best to save Atlantis. They sent most of the lower dimensional beings back, at least as many as they could, and sealed up the dimensional tear. Despite this, the situation got really bad, really fast. All of the economic systems collapsed. Financial, social, and all concepts of how life ought to be completely broke down. Everyone on Atlantis began getting sick with weird diseases, and the entire continent went into a state of survival. Life was no longer about living. It became about surviving until tomorrow. It was a literal hell on Earth. The Nacals had no idea what to do. They were children compared to the events that had been thrust upon them. So, they prayed. They prayed to the highest levels of conscious life in the universe, asking for help from anyone who could hear them. The problem was reviewed on many high levels of life, who I am drawing as the Justice League because the 11th and 12th dimensions are completely incomprehensible to us in our current state.
I'm enjoying the stream, thank you. Praying gesture.
This is just too surreal for me.
They prayed to Batman. They prayed to goddamn Batman.
What they told us was this: we were going to fall. We were going to hit rock bottom, level 1, the lowest place we possibly could be in the universe and still survive. Also, we were changing polarity. We were no longer a female species, so we were starting from square one as a male species. And finally, and this was the shocker, we would only have 13,000 years to return to Christ consciousness. Normally, it takes hundreds of thousands of years for a species.
Yeah, dumbasses. We lost our Christ consciousness. Okay, that was a huge blow to the human species. All right, you know
to get to Christ consciousness. We had to do it in a fraction of the time. If we didn't, we would not survive. This has never happened before in the universe, ever.
Caught in a bad romance, cat jam.
Ooh, caught in a bad romance. 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 Cat jam. Ooh, caught in a bad romance. Ooh, caught in a bad romance. Cat jam. Ooh, caught in a bad romance. Ooh, caught in a bad romance. Cat jam. Okay, sorry, had to get that out. Ahoy hoy! I got a random favor. Hey, K variable. I don't know what that means. That was better. Thank you. It sparked the creative, juices in me.
Thoth, who was the priest king of Atlantis at the time, learned that they would have to perform the...
Oh, there we go. Thoth was the priest king of Atlantis. There we go. Now it all makes sense. Everything's fitting into place.
...experiment on themselves. They received instructions from the highest levels of life and they went on their way. Thoth proceeded with a being named Ra and Aragat, who were previous kings of Atlantis, and began the experiment. To understand what they did, we have to talk about consciousness grids. A planetary grid is an etheric crystalline structure that envelops the planet and holds the consciousness of any one species of life. This grid does have an electromagnetic component associated with the third dimension, but it also has a component for every dimension as well. These grids are geometric, of course, and science will eventually discover that there is a grid for every species in the world. Each of these grids have their own geometry and are unique.
Uh-huh. Okay.
There's not another one like it, just as the species itself are unique. These grids give off light as well, and from space they can be seen as the source of the bluish glow around the Earth. What Thoth and friends had to do was create a
Yeah, this is some JRPG battle music right here. I don't know what's going on, but the jams are kind of jammy. Maybe that's how they get you.
Synthetic Christ consciousness grid, allowing humans to ascend to Christ consciousness in a very short time. But first, let's talk about the science behind the grid. Perhaps you've heard of the 100th monkey experiment. Over a span of 30 years, scientists were researching a species of monkey called Macaca fuscata on an island in Japan. They were providing the monkeys with sweet potatoes by dropping them in the sand. The monkeys liked sweet potatoes, but they didn't like the sand and dirt so much. A few monkey children figured out that they could wash their sweet potatoes, and some of them taught the technique to their parents. Only a few of the adult monkeys did this though. This went on for some time until one day the monkeys who actually knew the technique hit critical mass. And bingo! The technique started spreading faster than it did before. Monkeys started learning it really easily across all of the Japanese islands nearby as well as on the mainland. They knew that there had to be something that wasn't yet understood about how a species
Is the volume not okay?
Connected to itself. So what did we do?
Oh.
We tried it on humans.
If you happen to have a chat with Mint Kuro anytime soon, let him know I say hello and wish him well. Was missing them when I was going over some Reddit stuff.
Caught in a bad romance. Oh.
Too many O's. Thank you for the $5 dono, Malachi. Also, yeah, K variable, of course. I haven't heard from Mint Kuro in forever, and you know, if Mint happens to be watching, we all miss you. You know, we miss you. Hope you're doing okay.
A research team made a picture out of human faces. About 100 faces hidden within a single picture, but at first glance, you could only see.
I'm sorry, they made it out of 100 human faces? You're gonna need to. Spirit Science, I hate to pull this card on you, but you're gonna need to like specify here, okay? Because when you say that, I genuinely don't know if you mean like they drew 100 faces or if they literally made it out of 100 like human faces, like serial killer style. Like what? You need to tell us more. We need more info there.
About 6 or 7. They did several surveys with a few hundred people in Australia and said, all right, find the faces. Most people could only pick out 6, 7, 8, 9 or so, not many more. After that, the research team went to Britain and aired the picture on a closed cable BBC special that was shown only in England. They showed where all of the faces were, every last one. Half of the research team, which stayed in Australia, did the experiment again with new subjects. And lo and behold, people were just naturally able to see more faces. After this experiment, they knew that something definitely connects us all, and the field of noetics is learning more about it daily. It's mass consciousness. In Lesson 11, I showed you the 3 levels of consciousness. Each of these levels have their own consciousness grids around the planet, and our second level grid is based on squares and triangles. Many governments of the world, especially the Russian and US governments, were studying our grids back in the 60s and probably earlier. When mapping out the grid on the planet, you find little military bases on many of the nodal points of the grid. There are tons of these bases way out in the middle of nowhere, like on little islands.
Yeah, it must be to protect the spiritual grid. It couldn't possibly be to project the imperial power of America.
Islands like Guam. This couldn't be a coincidence that these government powers placed their bases right where the little spirals came out of the grid. They were trying to take control of the grid, because if you control consciousness, you control what we think and feel. Of course, there was another organization that had its hand in both of these governments, and still do, and we will discuss them soon enough. This grid is visible through astral projection as well. 13,000 years ago, it began. Thoth.
Okay, look, I don't want to distract from this craziness, but you guys have to have a little bit of respect for how good I just killed those two things. that swooped down to try and kill me. It was like a really good use of my weapon's special ability, and I feel really proud of it, frankly.
Ra and Aragot were to create a global complex that was able to build a synthetic Christ consciousness grid over a 13,000-year time period. The first thing they did was to fly to a place which is now called the Giza Plateau, but back then it was known as the land of Chem. It was also a rainforest back then as well, not desert like it is today. First, they created a grid around the planet fourth dimensionally, and then began to construct it in the physical third dimension. They went to the male energetic axis of the Earth and constructed a complex which today is called the Solar Cross. These men were sixth-dimensional beings at that time and were living at a very high level of consciousness, so whatever they thought...
Okay, but does that mean that the scanner says their power level is over 9,000? Like, what does the scanner say about their power level? That's what I'm really trying to get at, okay? Like, you know, I can't rely on your petty assumptions here. I need hard scientific data from anime scanners.
...thought happened instantly. It was that simple. According to Thoth, he built the Great Pyramid, not the Egyptian king Cheops. Thoth says that it was built 200 years prior to the pole shift and built very quickly. These pyramids were aligned precisely with both Fibonacci and golden mean spirals emanating from out of the solar cross. Interestingly enough, Edgar Cayce also channeled that the pyramids were constructed in this time. The pyramids were also found to be built from the top down. The stones on top were placed first, which has baffled researchers ever since. Every time more is learned about the pyramids, we move further into dark on understanding how they were formed. If what Thoth says is true, well, that explains everything.
Does it?
From there, Thoth and friends constructed an entire network of temples and structures along this grid fourth dimensionally, placing them on nodes on the new synthetic Christ consciousness grid they were creating. All of them were made with Fibonacci or golden mean spirals, and all of them were mathematically referred back to the solar cross in Egypt through the Great Pyramid. The creation of all of the sacred sites on the planet were no accident. It was a single consciousness that created them all, from Machu Picchu to Stonehenge to Zaghuan, you name it. There are a few exceptions, but most were created by a single awareness as part of a unity consciousness grid. Although the Great Pyramid was done all at once,
guys, I don't know about you, but this is all starting to make a whole lot of sense. Okay, like I don't know about you guys, but this is all, it's all starting to fit together. Maybe.
Many of these ancient structures of the world were made fourth dimensionally and slowly dropped in frequency until they manifested on the third dimension over a long period of time. Richard Hoagland's research brings this forward, but he wasn't the first either. They showed how one sacred site is extrapolated from another to another to another. A hot topic of discussion right now are ley lines. These are simply geometric relations between sacred sites. Archaeologists are now finding these huge connections between major spiritual sites in the globe, and now we know why they're connected. These sites had to be built physically so that the Christ consciousness grid could manifest. In a way, think of the physical sites as the wiring of a giant wireless electrical system, and then it needs about 13,000 years of continuous energy flow for it to actually turn on.
Oh yeah, we can all think about that. That makes sense. Sure. All right.
And just so that you're not left in suspense, yes, the grid was completed. It came to life and is now active, though not really used. Congratulations, Earth.
I was really
we
worried.
actually survived. Not only has Thoth told us this in person, but he's also written it down in the Emerald Tablets. These tablets were left in the Great Pyramid thousands of years ago. There are 12 tablets in total, formed from a substance created through alchemical transmutation. They are imperishable, resistant to all elements and corrosion. Their atomic structure is fixed in place, and no change can ever take place. In that respect, they violate the material laws of ionization. These tablets share a great wisdom, and you can read them at over 100 different levels of consciousness, and you will always understand them differently. If you're interested in this stuff, you should definitely consider reading them. As you can probably tell, Thoth plays a pretty large role in what happened. Most of this information comes from him. Thoth also provided most of this information about the Flower of Life and its geometric relationship to consciousness with us. And this stuff is tied intimately to the geometry of the universe. Considering the quality and quantity of information that he has shared, it makes you really start considering that this next part can be true. The Great Pyramid has a legendary missing capstone. According to the Emerald Tablets, deep under the Great Pyramid, there's a room called the Hall of Records. This room was not built by Thoth and long predates the Atlantean civilization.
Here we go.
Within the Hall of Records is the capstone of the pyramid, which is 5.5 inches high, solid gold, and completely holographic image of the Great Pyramid. It has all of the little rooms and everything. However, this leaves us with a 24 square foot piece of the Great Pyramid that's missing. If what Thoth says is true, that missing piece actually belongs to a very special airship that exists on Earth. And the way to the airship is through the Sphinx. The Sphinx, according to Thoth, is not 12,000 years old, but dates back over 5.5 million years on Earth. Deep under the Sphinx, about 1 mile down, is a round room with a flat floor and flat ceiling. Inside
it's all adding up.
this room is the oldest synthetic object on Earth. The object is about 2 city blocks in size. It's round like a disc and has a flat bottom and top. It is also only about 3 atoms thick, except for a pattern on the top and bottom which looks like this. This pattern is 5 atoms thick. Thoth says that it's powered by consciousness, thoughts, and feelings, and connects with your own living Merkaba, which means that it becomes an extension of you and your own energy fields. The ship is also intimately connected with the spirit of the Earth, and is the protector for the whole planet. Thoth built the pyramid the way he did to fit with the ship. When on top of the Great Pyramid, it creates this image from above. The disc ship has a circumference equal to the perimeter of the Great Pyramid. As we discussed in Lesson 11, whenever that ratio appears, life occurs. This ship can only be used by the purest of souls. See, whenever we approach the point in the precession of the equinox where our poles do these shifts, we become very vulnerable. Things often degenerate, and while things become chaotic, there are often other species who wish to take us over. This has always happened, not just with us, but with all evolving consciousness. Every time a takeover seems imminent, a very pure person will find their way to the ship and raise it into the air. The Earth and Sun will connect with that person and give him or her great power. Then, whatever that person thinks and feels will happen. And think about it. If consciousness is the primary core component of the entire planet, does it not make sense that it would have its own defense mechanism?
No.
This defense is an airship that plugs into the Earth and the Sun, allowing the Earth to have protection. Our takeover event actually already happened, the same year the Christ grid was activated. The year was 1989.
The what grid? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I missed that particular part. The what grid was activated? Exactly. Okay.
And we were having some troubles with the Greys, a race of ETs who were slowly plotting takeover.
What?
Due to a previous scuffle we were having. A very pure woman in Peru made the ascension process into the Christ consciousness grid and found the ship. She tuned it to the frequency of the 4th dimension, where she raised it through the Earth and into the air, and manifested a situation for the Greys to leave. Within a very short time, the Greys began getting sick, and remained sick for as long as they stayed here. They have been forced to leave for now, and we are once again safe. The ship is a warship in that whatever race is trying to take over, the person will just think them away, think up a situation, and force them to leave.
Oh. Dedoy.
Returning to the events on Atlantis, after completing the complex in Egypt, Thoth and pals returned to Atlantis, where they waited for about 200 years until that critical point on the precession of the equinox where the poles would shift. They knew that Atlantis would sink, and they would be ready.
Previously on Thoth and Pals!
Thoth, the poles are shifting.
Oh, the pole shift? Yeah, whoa, what's wrong with your eyes? I don't know.
When Thoth first saw signs of the polar shift, they returned to the land of Chem and raised the warship into the sky. They went to Atlantis and picked up the Nakals. The Nakals weren't just passengers though, and each and every being was working in unity to create a very powerful Merkaba around themselves and the ship. They returned to the Great Pyramid and landed the ship on top, forming the phi ratio with the pyramid. And then, it happened. The poles began to shift, and human consciousness began to plummet. Simultaneously, the electromagnetic and magnetic fields of the Earth collapsed, and all life on the planet went into the Great Void, the 3.5 days of absolute blackness described by many ancient cultures in the world. The Emerald Tablets say that whenever we go through a polar shift, we go through a void space as we change our frequencies for about 3.5 days. This is also in the Troano document, depicted by 3.5 stones painted black. This refers to a time when we go through what science calls the electromagnetic null zone. During the pole shift, a phenomenon takes place where everything just seems to disappear for a certain time. Usually it's between 2 to 4 days, and the last time it was 3.5 days. Here's where it gets interesting. What happens to us does not usually happen to a normal species, because most advanced species will have their Merkabas handy at the time of the shift. We didn't, due to our little crisis, and we got sucked into the void space without protection. This resulted in us losing our memories. Science realizes that all of our memories are connected through cells in our brains as well as fields around our heads. What is not entirely understood by science yet, at least not directly, is the connection our memories have with the planet itself. We've discussed this before. The magnetics of the Earth affect how we think and act. The Merkaba is an electromagnetic field that you create around your body that can serve as protection from void as you're consciously going through it. What happened to us when we didn't have that protection? It was a clean wipe. When we existed on Atlantis, we were living at a very high level of consciousness, in a higher dimension. We had extremely advanced and sophisticated bodies and minds, and were capable of practically anything, living in a dimension where molecules were spaced so far apart that consciousness could interact with them without physically moving. It's hard to explain, because you can literally shape your environment immediately through your consciousness in these higher frequencies. In that sense, we were creators, knowing and understanding.
this is what they showed people in Guantanamo to break them.
Oneness, beings of love. But then we fell. We dropped back down to this place called the third dimension. We also fell in consciousness back to zero. We forgot how to use the pineal gland, and it slowly shrunk to the size it is now, like a...
Oh yeah, basically, he also thinks that there's a gland in your brain that calcifies with age. That is what keeps us from being psychic. It basically keeps us from unlocking all of the magical energy in our brains.
Raisin, where it's supposed to be eyeball size. When this happened, we forgot how to breathe source energy into our bodies, and our lifespans went kaput. Eventually, we went from 900 years to what it is today. We had not experienced this dense reality that we had before, at least for a very long time. We were kind of like a supercomputer that gets completely wiped, no operating system or anything. We had these advanced physical bodies, but we didn't know how to use them. This is why today we are so physically advanced compared to pretty much all the other animals in this third dimension. For a time, the survivors of the Atlantean Fall, and there were a few, were literally hairy barbarians. We even had to rediscover fire. The reason we're having such a hard time finding evidence of Atlantis is because for the most part, the events of Atlantis took place on a much higher dimension than our physical Earth exists on right now. Everything I've drawn of Atlantis can't be taken as that's what it looked like, because it didn't. This landmass did physically exist, but the Atlanteans were not inhabiting that dimension of its existence. If the warship hadn't been protected by the Merkaba, the Nakals would have lost their memories. They retained their memories when the Earth came out of the void and began their work once more. Thoth and 1/3 of the Nakals went to the Island of the Sun in Bolivia. Aragot and 1/3 went to Tibet, and Ra and the remaining third went to Egypt, where they waited. Now, we're going to begin bridging the gaps between this story and our current history. In between the fall of Atlantis and the dawn of our first civilizations, who were the Egyptians and the Sumerians, there was a 6,500-year gap between them. What was happening to us in that time? We have to look at this precession chart again. This is where we fell in consciousness, point C, and this was our falling asleep phase too. Thoth, Ra, and the Ascended Masters were waiting until point D. They had to wait for humans to just evolve themselves over a 6,500-year time period until they were advanced enough to actually receive this new information that they were going to provide.
Humans
Sometime
had
in
to
here
level
was
up.
when the flood of Noah
Just
occurred.
like Sword Art
Because of the
Online,
pole shift, the
the
Earth
best
went through an ice
anime.
age. This is scientific fact. When the ice melted, it would have caused massive flooding. DNA is the physical manifestation of who you are. It is your soul's physical aspect. What we are seeing in DNA is changes in the codons. There's 64 possible codons in DNA, and humans only have about 22 or so. What we're finding is that there are 6 more codons being activated within these children, and they are choosing 2 of the 6. These kids are what we call indigo and crystal children, and probably the super psychics as well. Now, this is a chromosome. Basically, what this is lots and lots of DNA wrapped into this weird H-like shape. This is located in every cell, and is part of your body of consciousness. What Thoth tells us is that every level of consciousness seen here not only has its own consciousness grid, but its chromosome change as well.
Oh, of course.
The second level, where we are now, has 44 and 2 chromosomes. To any scientist, this is basic biology. The first level, however, has
dummy.
42 and 2, and this third level has 46 and 2. The fourth and fifth have 48 and 2 and 50 and 2, respectively. The primary physically visible difference between these DNA in all life is height. The first level has an average height of 4 to 6 feet tall. The second level, us, has an average height of 5 to 7 feet. Third are about 10 to 16 feet, which we are about to translate to. Fourth is 30 to 35 feet, and the last is 50 to 60. You may remember a being named Metatron, the Hebrew archangel who is the perfection of what humanity is to become. He was 55 feet tall, that guy. The last 2 heights are far in the distant future for us, though.
You know, it's so nice of historians to really record accurate heights and like weights and blood types for all of these ancient mythological creatures. It's really kind. You know, we had to wait until, you know, the anime scene transitions in My Hero Academia for that to evolve naturally to our species. You know, it just came so naturally to them, you know?
This is a place in Egypt today called Abu Simbel. The first thing you notice is that these statues are huge, but with the information about the DNA, this paints a different picture. These beings would be in the 60-foot range if they were to stand.
Oh, it's so nice for all of these 55-foot dudes to pose for these statues.
They were at the 5th level of consciousness. These beings on a different wall are 35 feet tall, 4th level of consciousness. Here are some 3rd levels as well. Archaeologists saw this and thought that it meant that the man was just much more important than the woman. when in actuality, the kings of Egypt had 5 different names, one for every level of consciousness. Some of the kings were even able to translate into different dimensions, and that's how they guided the population with the power of the gods. In Egypt, according to today's top archaeologists and researchers, the Egyptians and Sumerians both began their civilizations right around the same time from each other, within a few hundred years or so. Both of these civilizations emerged out of nowhere with perfect writing abilities that were not improved upon since. When they first emerged, they were extremely sophisticated and clear, and slowly degenerated over generations. No archaeologist can explain how this happened or explain how it could have happened. They placed Egypt and Sumer into a special classification called stair-step evolution. What happened was, one day, Egypt got its language, full and complete. Then the knowledge leveled off. And then it got another massive leap a little while.
Yeah, you know, like almost like people made a concerted effort to codify the language over like a prolonged period of time. I don't know.
Later. Then suddenly, they knew everything about water and moat systems just perfect. Then, a little time later, bam, they're masters of hydraulics. How did Egypt and Sumer do this? Well, this is what Thoth said.
I don't know, maybe some like early version of the scientific method. Look, I'm just spitballing here.
When we were evolving on our own for 6,500 years, Ra and the Ascended Masters were waiting in an underground city beneath the Great Pyramid. We'll come back to this in a bit. Thoth's son Tat formed a group called the Tat Brotherhood, which is a secret group that still exists today as protectors and keepers of the sacred temples. Today, they're still connected to the Ascended Masters. So about 6,000 years ago, some members of the Tat Brotherhood would wait until they would meet someone who could understand what they were going to teach them. When they found someone, they would just tune their frequencies to the 3rd dimension and walk up and tell them information flat out. They said, hey, if you do this and this happens. The Egyptians would say, wow, look at that. Then they would go underground, wait another little while, and repeat the process. Over a short period of time, the Egyptian and Sumerian evolution shot up in stair steps. As for the Sumerians, they also received a more detailed story by those who were assisting them. They described to the Sumerians in all of the details they remembered. They said, this is the history of the planet, write it down. The Sumerians knew about the precession of the equinox because they were told it by the Nacals from Atlantis. After this stair-step period, we began to fall asleep further. Things got worse once more. It was our falling sleep stage of precession, and although the Nacals had given us a
it wasn't something like, I don't know, the Bronze Age collapse or anything. You know, it wasn't any historical event. God.
We were consciously dozing off. On that note, it's time for the story about the city under the pyramid. Keep an open mind about this because there is very little proof for what I'm about to say. For over 40 years, Drunvalo Melchizedek has been studying human consciousness through sacred geometry and spiritual teachers and masters all over the world. In 1996, he was contacted by a source in Egypt who said that something incredible had been discovered. A stone stele came out of the ground between the paws of the Sphinx into the daylight. They removed it and dug into the earth beneath the Sphinx. There they found a room with 3 tunnels leading off of it. One of the tunnels, which went to the Great Pyramid, had another tunnel coming off it, and it was shielded by a wall of light. Bullets could not pass through this field, and people could not even get close to it without feeling like they're going to die. The Egyptian government found a particular person who could turn off this field. They also had brought in Paramount Studios to film it, as they had filmed the opening of King Tut's tomb. They had a good relationship with Egypt. The government wanted several $1 million from Paramount, but at the last minute they asked for an extra $1.5 million under the table. Paramount was outraged, and they backed off. Things were silent for about 3 months. Then, Drunvalo heard from a source again, who was involved in all this, who said,
I lost like 25,000 souls, damn it. Or rangs.
That 3 men shut off the light field and went inside. They found themselves inside a very large building that went on for miles underground, which was really the edge of a giant underground city, which was really just one giant building. Then, a little while later, an Egyptian archaeologist named Larry Hunter began describing the same thing, but more detailed. He said that the city was 6.5 by 8 miles wide and 12 stories deep, and the city was outlined by specific temples in Egypt. The 3 pyramids are lined up with Orion's belt, but there are also small temples for every other star in the constellation. Those temples map out the city underground and are made out of a special stone not found anywhere else in Egypt called Koinen stone. Incredibly enough, very recently, ancient tunnels were found in Romania that led to both Egypt and the inner earth. Now, I don't have time to go into detail about this particular story, but if you want, check out the book Transylvanian Sunrise by Radu Sinamar. To be clear, this is a theory that has not been accepted by the Egyptian government, but the underground city that Thoth...
Or anybody. Just any kind of scholar.
...said was there, is, according to Mr. Hunter, marked by temples made of a unique substance, and the temples match the star pattern of the constellation of Orion. 4,000 years after the stair-step evolution, we were at our lowest stage of our evolution. We were hitting bottom on the awareness road. Suddenly, out of the darkness, 3 men came to Earth to give us a little nudge.
Thanks,
Everything in
Jesus.
ancient Egypt was synthetic. They had this entire civilization based around achieving heightened states of consciousness, but they had to do it through tools. Now, we're not going to look at each of these tools individually, but let me give you a brief overview here. This tool was used for transferring vibrations into the body. Along with that were the hook and flail. This little device was a kind of generator to increase vibrations, though there's not too much information available on it. This thing, however, was their most important tool, the Ankh. They saw the Ankh as the secret to eternal life, and they used it not as a physical tool, but as an energetic one. They would use this form and Ankh their sexual energy. Now, this could be a huge topic on its own, like how energy travels up and down the body through a vertical tube between 5 energy channels that counter-rotate as they extend through the body. But basically, sexual energy is an incredibly powerful energy. We definitely abuse it today, but what the Egyptians knew was that when you had an orgasm, a very large amount of energy bursts from your root chakra all the way...
What? What? What?
Up your spine to the top of your head, and then it gets released. What the Egyptians would do was when the spiral of energy hit their heart chakra, they would Ankh the energy out of the back of their body and over their head and back into their body, where they would keep the energy and retain a massive energy boost. In other words, if you take a tuning fork and hit it, it will reverberate for a certain amount of time. Then, if you attach an Ankh on top of it and hit it again, it will reverberate at least 3 times longer. The Egyptians were doing this with their bodies. Moving on, when Atlantis was first formed, the Nacals set up something called a mystery school. This is the special type of school where you learn about consciousness, and you learn different aspects of expanding your own consciousness, and eventually getting to a place where you become immortal. It usually took a very long time to achieve this state, and that's why there were only about 1,000 Nacals in comparison to the millions of Lemurians at the start of Atlantis. The first Atlantean to reach the immortal state was a man named Osiris. Ancient Egypt's mythology tells a story about Osiris, a man who was killed and cut up into pieces by his brother in an act of rage, and then the pieces were scattered. This event, perhaps less exaggerated than the myths, actually did happen, and it took place on Atlantis. Osiris's wife and sister retrieved the pieces, and upon returning the final piece, they restored the creative energy flow and brought his spirit back into the body.
Oh, well, that's
Through
good. I
doing
was
this,
really worried
Osiris
about it.
became immortal, and he was the first immortal of Atlantis. This story is told throughout ancient Egypt on many temple walls, and I'm going to show you why. Osiris went through the 3 stages of consciousness. The first one was whole, the second was separated from itself, included physically, and the third was whole again. The Nacals used Osiris's understanding of how he became immortal as a template for how others could do it as well, only through consciousness, without needing to be cut up, of course. This eventually became what we would call the religion of Atlantis, but it was more of a deeper understanding that they were following. This template was also used in Egypt, which we will look at now. Through this stair-step evolution, we began to change from the first level of consciousness into the second. Before the fall, we had incredible memories. It wasn't this vague recollection that we have now, but today we might see it as full-tilt 3D holographic memory. After the fall, we still had a photographic memory, and could share these experiences with each other, which is called dream time. It is what the Aborigines of Australia still have today. Through the introduction of writing, however, we began to change from the first level of consciousness into the second. We lost our incredible memories, and became very separate from each other and ourselves. Thoth was the one who introduced writing, and if you look at ancient Egyptian culture, it even says, Thoth brought writing to us, as well as many other things. Now that we were in the second level...
Yeah, it couldn't possibly be because, you know, people wanted an explanation of how they got a language in the first place. Oh man, don't dream time into this nonsense.
Over time, things began to change, and a very serious problem developed, which if it hadn't been solved,
Yeah,
it would have
Dream
caused a
has
major
been the
catastrophe in
subject
our own
of
near
many
future.
hit pieces
Basically,
lately.
in Egypt, the Ascended Masters
Need
had
to
used
go easy on
Osiris'
that
genetic
guy.
coding of changing chromosomes to show others the path of ascension. They developed a system of 42 and 2 gods, with a lowercase g. They were actually called Neiters. Most will recognize this one. His name was Anubis. There were 42 and 2 Neiters, who were representative of human chromosomes. Each one of them showed a specific pathway of life or human experience, and people would follow these understandings to learn more about their life or their own reality. The problem developed when both Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt became more separated from themselves, and the meanings of these Neiters were lost. Over time, the drawings of these Neiters changed, and the meanings changed with them. People had no idea what they meant. Then, it got worse, when the Egyptian king Menes merged Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt into a unified country. Menes also merged the belief systems, so now you had 88 gods that people were fighting over to decide who was really God. This was an issue, because now they had people not knowing what to believe, completely lost, separated from their understanding of their own divinity and God. Things became separated further, people fought over which gods were really gods. Today, we look back and say, wow, They thought there were so many gods, when really, this wasn't the case at all. Even with the help from the Tat Brotherhood, we just couldn't get it right. There was one short period of Egyptian culture that most historians don't really understand. As it's written in ancient texts and hieroglyphs, for 17.5 years there was a bizarre new ruler that completely changed how Egypt was run, and his name was Akhenaten. Before him, there were only kings. Akhenaten was the first pharaoh, which meant that which you will become. He was also, believe it or not, 15 to 16 feet tall, at least that's how he was always depicted, and had an elongated skull. Both of these
I don't think he was 16 feet tall. You know, I'm just going out on a limb here. I'm not an archaeologist or anything. I don't know anything about the topic. I just don't think that's true.
Are related to Christ consciousness. Akhenaten abolished all previous understandings of God and tried to instill a one-God understanding in everyone. After 17 years, the majority of Egyptians revolted and Akhenaten was killed.
Maybe he was a normal-sized man who could transform into a 15 to 16 foot king of games. You know, maybe like if Yugi ever grew into like an adult, he would like, you know, his alter ego Yami would grow exponentially as well. You know.
Soon to be replaced by someone else, returning to the old system. What actually happened? To correct the problem, Thoth got the help from Ai and Tia, who were the first immortals from Lemuria, and got them to mate interdimensionally to conceive a Christ consciousness being.
What?
Thoth said that he worked with the previous kings of Egypt to help achieve this, and Egyptologists find that Akhenaten came completely out of nowhere. It took some time, and there was a transitional period involving Amenhotep III, but soon Akhenaten was on the throne. Akhenaten used his time to bring Egypt back to a simple religion where there was one god, one reality. He used imagery of a sun disk to represent this. The priests in Egypt didn't like that because the religious beliefs were centered on the priests. Then he comes along and says, you don't need priests, God is within you, and you can access God from within your own selves. Well, they didn't like that. He also pulled the military back and said, don't attack unless someone else attacks first. The military didn't like him either. Plus, the people generally didn't like him because they enjoyed worshipping their many gods. Eventually, they disposed of him. After all that, what did Akhenaten do that evidently saved humankind? Well, he developed a mystery school, with the intention of showing a small group of humans a way to ascend into the immortal state. Usually, it took hundreds of years to reach the level of immortality, and Akhenaten had 17 years to produce results. This was a very close call, but he did it. He actually showed 300 individuals the path to immortality in this short time. So after the general population disposed of Akhenaten, these 300 immortals would go beyond Egypt.
What?
Thoth wrote in the Emerald Tablets that after ancient Egypt ended, he brought a man named Pythagoras into the Great Pyramid and taught him the geometry of the universe. That man then went on to found Greece, which was originally built upon schools for teaching geometry and the Platonic solids and all of that stuff. Thoth lived a lifetime here as well, where he was known as Hermes Trismegistus. Akhenaten's immortals became a group called the Essene Brotherhood. They first migrated to a place called Masada in Israel. Even today, Masada is known as the capital of the Essene Brotherhood.
Oh no.
Now get this. In this brotherhood, there were two people in particular, a man and a woman. You might have heard of them. Mary and Joseph? See, it was part of the Ascended Master's plan that they would bring in a being who would show the pathway to Christ consciousness. He would come to Earth as a second-level being, a regular Joe, and achieve Christ consciousness through the course of his life. Then, the ascension process, the transitional experience from the second to third level, would go into the consciousness grid that was still being formed. He was able to transition because he was originally from these higher levels. That man is known today as Jesus, although his name at that time was Yahshua ben-Hur. If Yahshua had not shown up, we would not have had that ascension experience available to us today. None of us would be aware that these higher levels of understanding even existed, and we would destroy ourselves. According to what Thoth said, Mary and Joseph mated interdimensionally. Mary could have been a virgin, physically, but she mated with Joseph in a way that would allow a soul from a higher reality to come down to Earth and have a human experience. Usually, this is impossible to do otherwise. Through Yahshua's work, he came here just like us, a total human being, but he went through these three important stages: final death, resurrection, and ascension, and gave us these experiences so that we could access them down the road. Now, as we all know, the story of Jesus has a missing piece. He was a child, disappeared for some time, and then showed up again when he was 30. In a book called The 18 Absent Years of Jesus Christ, the leading theories about where he went was actually out east to either the Himalayan or Tibetan mountains, where he became an enlightened guru. He brought his teachings back to the world after that. If you remember from part 1, the Kundalini of the planet was residing in Tibet at that time. They were very spiritually adept people living there, and remain so today. Now, on the topic of Christ, there's something else I'd like to bring up: the Lord's Prayer. Today, we know this as the only prayer that Jesus taught, but did you know it's actually a geometric prayer meditation? A man named Bodhi McCoy spent over 20 years working with this prayer and analyzing it with sacred geometry, and has discovered some incredible synchronicities. In his book, Live the Promise, he explains how the original prayer, not the extended version mind you, has 7 segments or thoughts, which align perfectly with the 7 chakras as well as the 7 original branches of yoga. Bodhi teaches how to do this prayer meditation, as well as meditations him and his wife have developed based on the Lord's Prayer, called heart dances. It's really quite incredible to see how it all works with the pure geometries of the universe. If you wish to learn more, check out livethepromise.net. If you study Christian religion and Egyptian religion, you'll actually find that they parallel in almost every way except for the Egyptians' understanding of God. Most evidence shows that Christian religion came out of Egyptian religion, and then later they went back and discredited the Egyptians. Around 300 AD, there was a council called the Council of Nicaea, which was the syndication between the Roman political and religious authorities. Basically, the religious leaders and political leaders realized that they could unite and impose more influence on the people and control society through their unity. It's right around this time that we begin to see the manifestation of the New Testament, which was put together from scriptures and stories, some newer and some much older.
Almost like it's not manifesting, almost like it's being written.
Which were renewed and superimposed on the life of Yahshua ben Hur, which today we know as Jesus of Nazareth. The term Christ actually stems back from much before the Bible. It comes from the word Christala, which is a word that derives from the original 7 core audible sounds of creation. When the creation of the universe occurred, the original tones were ka, ra, ya, sa, ta, ha, la. Christla actually was broken down on earth into 2 words, Christ, which soon became Christ, and Hla, which became Allah, which were broken down and changed through oral tradition. The symbol for Atlantis was 3 rings inside of the other. The inside were the Nakals, the middle ring were called Maya, and the outer ring were the Atlanteans. The Maya's job was communicating the messages from the inner circle out to the regular people of Atlantis. When Atlantis sank, the Maya took their knowledge, a crystal skull with memories of Atlantis, and their calendar, and went out to what today is called the Yucatan Peninsula, birthplace of the Mayan civilization. Their calendar is the most advanced, detailed calendar on the planet, and it has its roots in Atlantis. Over the last few hundred years, a group of people have slowly monopolized the entire world into what it is now. Today, there are 13 families that are among the richest families in the world. They have their hands in next to every organization and government and control over 95% of the money. They control our modern world from the very tippy top. Today, we like to call them the Illuminati, except that's not really who they are. The word Illuminati means enlightened ones, which was established long ago as a secret society that was focused around expanding knowledge through scientific and spiritual understandings. Secret societies were not originally bad, but rather consisted of those who just kind of got it. They understood information that the average person at that time would not accept and demonize. These societies had to be kept a secret because of the control that the church had and refuted the gains that they wanted to explore. This is where Freemasonry originally comes from. If you do the research on the time periods, what probably happened was that the church, who had the majority of the control at the time, probably infiltrated some of these organizations to make sure that they were not creating plans to expose information and destroy the world order that they had created.
Chat. Soon I will get a smooch.
Led to the church exposing some of the societies as devil worship and blasphemous, and fear of these groups rose. Over time, many secret societies branched off by those who were corrupt or previously infiltrated by the church, and gained more control through the church and large organizations that were being established. Today, there exist 13 families around the world who pretty much own the world, with over 95% of the money and a lust for greed, power,
Yeah, there's the anti-Semitism again. You guys almost forgot about it in the never-ending stream of bullshit, didn't you? I didn't. It's been there the whole time.
And control. More and more information has become present lately that many of these families may have DNA that is different than the rest of the human population. It is speculated that they share DNA that was passed down from the Martian race or other species races. They contain no love or emotion and are completely power-driven. This brings us to the end of the human history story for spirit science, but of course, it's not really the end. For one, we've only really scratched the surface of discussing many of these topics. Secret societies, for example, would take another 2 or 3 lessons to really get into. Plus, the human history story won't end because we're still living it, and what happens next is ultimately up to you. This story, while seemingly unbelievable and at times outrageous, does explain a lot. Think about it. We've covered the Bermuda Triangle, the face on Mars, Jesus, what the Egyptians were doing, the rise of Greece, pretty much most modern religions, the reason we popped up out of nowhere 6,500 years ago, the stair-step evolution of those cultures, and the story of Atlantis, which has been elusive to us at the best of times. It also explains the Great Pyramids and their connection to all of the sacred sites on the planet, the Sumerian tablets, the Emerald tablets, Lucifer, and as for the Hebrews, if you read their Talmud, it actually seems to suggest that they're not from here. I'm not going to tell you to believe it, but
I'm not going to tell you to be anti-Semitic. I'm just asking questions. Thanks, neo-Nazi cult leader.
it definitely puts some perspective on many questions and aspects about the world, which we generally just don't have conclusive answers to. Take it with a grain of salt, though. After all, it is just a theory.
I'm not saying it's true, guys. I just made an hour-long video about it. To say that it's true. Oh, fuck me. I think we need 3 or 4 lessons. Luckily for you, there are so many more. This was only part 12 of an infinite part series. Be right back. I need to get my smooch, the reward for making this scintillating commentary for you folks. I did it, guys. I got my smooch. Also, this reminded me that it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm tired. So, I'm gonna go to sleep. But, I also wanted to tell you I'm probably not gonna be live tomorrow. So, heads up on that. because I'm taking the day off to just be with my partner, and it's gonna be real nice, and I'm really looking forward to it. And also, hi Warden, you making the dad jokes in YouTube chat. I see you. I appreciate you. And go enter the Christ grid. Yeah, of course. We will become even higher level dimensional beings after all of the sweet love making we'll do. And folks, I love all you guys. I'll see you on Thursday. You know what? For consistency, we're gonna raid into Doodleburb, and that way you get continuing Elden Ring content. All right, they're a little bit farther along in the game than I am, but that's okay. All right, you all go over there. Bye.